Hello and welcome to this Ebenezer Cottage mini-series, Real Italian Food, where you'll be cooking alongside me with recipes that have been passed down in my family from one generation to another. As many of the ingredients as I can find are organically grown and fresh from the garden, straight from the plot to plate. And on today's episode, we've got a family classic, Pollo alla Cacciatore, hunter's chicken. For this dish, I only need a couple of ripe tomatoes, and those 2 or 3 ripe tomatoes are going to work their way through the dish and be the real backbone that holds it all together alongside the garlic. Chicken alla Cacciatora is one of the easiest dishes you can do or learn. It's all done in one pot and it's really simple to put together, and it uses very few ingredients. We've got 5 chicken thighs, we've got some mushrooms. I've got a mixture between oyster mushrooms, some shiitake and just classic brown chestnut mushrooms, some rosemary which I picked from the garden, and some tomatoes which you saw me get from the greenhouse, garlic, olive oil, salt and pepper, and that's it. And the beauty of it is that when you build the dish, you do the whole thing cold in the pan, and then we turn the temperature up once it's all assembled. So let's get cooking. At this stage, the heat is off. There's no heat whatsoever in the pan, and we're just going to drizzle in that olive oil. And you want a good little glug here. From here, I like to bring in some garlic. This is some homegrown garlic, which I've just chopped in half. I like the bits to be quite chunky for this. I think it releases the flavour a little bit better. Now that I've got the olive oil and the garlic in the bottom, it's time to add in the tomatoes that I picked. And as I mentioned before, you don't need many. This isn't going to be a tomatoey sauce. It's more likely to just run through the dish and give the oil a kind of redness, which is really nice. And you will notice some bits of tomato once it's all cooked, of course, but it's not going to be the star of the show. They're going to be there in the background, but you will be glad that they're there in the background. So I just roughly chop these. It doesn't have to be precise at all. You could just stick them in chopped in half, or like I'm doing, cut them up maybe into quarters or 8. So that's the best part of the tomatoes in. I'm just going to pop this bit to the side. And now the assembly continues. I like to add some of these oyster mushrooms in. I think they've got a great texture, really nice flavour that runs through, and I just break them up with my hands. The shiitakes I'm going to leave whole, and these little chestnut mushrooms, again, I'm just going to break them up, nice and simple, because the idea of this dish is that it's something that a hunter could prepare in the wild. So maybe they're in the hills of Naples or Puglia or Tuscany or wherever, and they've caught a pheasant and they've gone for a forage. They've gone and got some mushrooms, maybe they've bought some little tomatoes from home, and they're also foraging for some herbs along the way, and the whole thing's made in one pot. So it's kind of like the sort of thing you'd imagine you could cook whilst camping on a hunting trip, essentially. Now that we've got all the mushrooms in, it's time to bring the meat in. This is some locally produced chicken, and I like to put it skin side down to start with. And the reason for this is that I like it to get a bit of colour as it cooks. Now we've got the chicken in, let's get the heat on. So I'm going to start it off on a high heat, let the pan come to temperature, and then just bring it down. And we're going to add in this lovely rosemary, which was picked from the garden, and that again is going to work its way through the dish. Now that the chicken's starting to cook and I can hear it bubbling away, I'm just going to add in a crack of black pepper, and we're also going to add in just a little bit of salt. Let it just cook for a little bit, though we don't want it to catch or burn, just want it to kind of golden up, so just a couple of minutes really with the higher heat. Then bring it down and pop your lid on. And once your lid's on, you just want to leave that half an hour to 45 minutes until your chicken's cooked, but make sure you're getting it down just onto a medium to low heat, and I would go on the lower side. We're about halfway now, about 25 minutes in I'd say. We're just going to take off the lid now and see if we've got that nice colour on the chicken that we wanted. And here's the moment of truth. Let's get the lid off the pan. So we're about halfway through now, the chicken's bubbling away really nicely. You see the mushrooms are all still a nice shape, the tomatoes breaking down, and the rosemary is really adding that flavour in. But have we got the colour on the chicken? We have. this is looking really promising now, and at this midway stage, whilst the lid's off, it's a good chance to give things a little poke around, make sure things aren't sticking too much. And if you need to add a little bit of liquid now, you could put a little drop of white wine or a bit of water just to loosen things up a bit. I'm happy with where this is at, so I'm going to make sure that the temperature's down low. We're going to pop that lid back on. Now this to me is looking like it's done. Let's get it served up. Here we go, chicken alla Cacciatora. A real easy dish to make, just one pot with a few ingredients. You'll find the recipe in the description down below. Why don't you give it a try? And whilst you're there, why don't you like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.